Winchester to end the blight on Winchester Centre, and with the strapline, a Liberal Democrat administration will be bold in everything it does. It's time to be bold, have confidence in our city and move forward, not keep looking back. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the minute and the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Lurney. Do you have a seconder, please?
Seconded, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And do you wish to reserve your right to speak?
Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just ask a reminder that Appendix E, report to the CAB 3322, is exempt. If any members have any questions on this, Council will need to firstly move into exempt session. But do any members wish to speak on exempt?
We might see how that goes, Madam Mayor.
Okay. So are there any questions, please? Could we start with Councillor Scott, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple of questions, if I may. Just like to expand Councillor Lurney's open comments, really. A couple of questions come to mind there. When you've done, as you explained, lots of consultation that's happened, can you explain a bit further why it's come now down to one single developer to conclude? Was it just because of recent consultations, or have we not learnt some of the lessons through the judicial review that came through to the council? Can you explain how you come to the conclusion of a one developer over what we've learnt from the judicial review and Claire Lloyd-Jones? The other thing on, which is reassuring, on CAB 3322 1.2, when you're saying for homes for all, and you're meeting the aspirations of the need of the younger generation, which I really will concur to. Can you explain a bit further the mechanisms of that? Will that be under a local lettings policy for ensuring that our local people in Winchester get to, if the aspirations is to build and it goes forward, how will we ensure that it is the local generation that is connected to this city gets the first bid for those homes? And what will be the rent setting? Because we all know that Winchester is a very expensive place to live. So if we're looking for a future of the future generation, we've got to make sure they can afford to live there. Can you just explain that as well? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lurney.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Yes, we have done significant amounts of consultation, but I think I would refer Councillor Scott principally to the strategic outline case, where we examined quite closely the alternative methods of delivery. That included the council doing the master plan itself, and going to, which could potentially have led to going to multiple developers. The one developer approach, selling the land off and relying on planning to deal with trying to achieve the aspirations of the SPD. Two of those scored very highly, and that was the simple sale of land. But as we recognise, that leads to minimal amounts of control. The issue with the multiple developer option is the cost and resource required to develop a master plan. In that scenario, this council does not have the resources to do that, and it would be very expensive for us to pay staff, pay the consultants, and so on to do that. And we would still at some point be having to engage with the market and engage with developers going forward. it's very hard to achieve the high level of expenditure we're expecting on the public realm in that kind of scenario. We want to open up the waterways. We also want to be able to curate the area and make it into a proper area which has its own character but melds smoothly into the rest of Winchester. Developing one part of the site independently of others clearly makes those aspirations much harder to achieve. Certainly the SPD was always very clear that a single master plan was the way forward, and in effect that's the direction we're working in, even if we couldn't achieve the multiple developer approach. I think it's important to say that the reason for the multiple developer approach in the SPD was principally, to my understanding, around retaining that character of Winchester as of avoiding big buildings of similar styles, but having that mix of different characters within different buildings. And part of the development brief involves the developer explaining how they will approach that design challenge, and also about their approach to looking at employing local architects for various parts of the site, which I think is definitely something we're going to be looking for when we make our choices. Having a very competent design team in charge of your master plan is really important, and how they choose the architects that work for them beyond that. But I think this is an approach which can give us that level of control which local people would like us to have over the development, while at the same time being able to achieve a commercial position which is better for the council than it would be if we tried to master plan it ourselves. With the second section, Councillor Scott is delving into detail which will be subject to consultation down the line rather than something that we're exploring right now. Within the brief, we are very clear, and within the policy, that we are talking about 40% affordable housing. Certainly for us, it would be unacceptable to be looking to provide that off-site, as has been suggested previously. A local lettings policy is certainly something which, again, we can look at as we go forward. Remembering that would include people working here, people who've been studying here for several years, but I think it may well be appropriate to have that kind of connection, given that one of the things that we're talking about is about it retaining young people in the city. So as long as we have a lettings policy which allows us to deal with that, I see no reason why we can't investigate that going forward. But as I say, that's going into levels of detail which is quite hard to commit to at the present point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Loney. Next, Councillor Godfrey, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In section 2.3 on page 110 of the agenda, the first paragraph is recognised by the Council that financial gain or investment in CWR for profit is not an outcome objective of this project. Is that an expectation that should be shared by the development partner? And if it is, how will the development partner expect to be motivated and rewarded?
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Loney.
Thank you. Clearly, while outcome for profit is not the key objective of this particular proposition, we're very clear that the outcomes of the SPD are what we're looking for, but we absolutely have to be realistic that a developer will be expecting profit, and we're also absolutely realistic that we'll be looking to share some of that profit as we go forward. But that's very different from that being a key aim of this project. Achieving the outcome that the people of Winchester want is the key aim, rather than the council making shed loads of money out of selling off land.
I first have Councillor Pearson, then I come back to Councillor Godfrey. Councillor Pearson.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I wasn't paying a bit of attention. I should have done. As we're talking about this for the first time in full council, rather than in bits of the council from time to time via MS Teams, I'd like to take the opportunity to ask a little bit more detail, or perhaps Councillor Lerney, about the archaeology that's under this site. We understand that a fair amount of work has been done, but we have no information about it, and that information may well be crucial in any decision we may wish to take. The same applies to how are they planning on removing the contaminated land, the drainage, because all of these impact on the eventual cost of land per square foot. And if you don't take that into account, then any sort of, for example, affordable housing you might want to put in that site becomes very, very difficult as far as rents are concerned. Certainly, if you're going to lay the edict, one can only go to X height. And all of these points were covered in the SPD, and I'm still a little bemused as to why all parties having accepted the SPD, at least as I understand it, we seem to be moving farther and farther away from the SPD. For example, the multiple developers, which is something we all agreed that's what we want. Now we're going to go back to what we had, the original Silver Hill, with one developer, and who knows what Pandora's box that will open. Certainly we have unfortunate experience about it with the developer at that time, as certainly those who are here present in council were aware of. Now, it's a long question, but it simply is, I remind you, archaeology, contaminated land, cost of drainage of that site, all of which must be part of the business case if we're going to make an informed decision. And at this point, I thank you, the leader, for the opportunity for the first time in 2 years to actually debate this in council, full council.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. Councillor Lerney.
Thank you. One thing I would say is that council is a very bad place for a conversation about these things, which I think is quite important when we're delving deeply into them. We did have many hours of scrutiny at the scrutiny committee, which members were welcome to attend. Councillor Pearson was informed of the Archaeology Day, which was the opportunity for members and members of the public to come and meet the archaeologists, discuss some of the work that's been ongoing, and to receive the report of what's been discovered so far. We have done considerable work to de-risk the archaeology on the site. We have a much better idea not only of what might be down there, but in terms of the ground conditions that exist. So that puts us in a much better place than we were 2 years ago. The same goes for investigation into another number of other areas that he mentions. So, for example, we've done considerable work with Arup around the water on the site, the potential for flooding, the need to deal with groundwater. Opening up the waterways is certainly something that will help considerably with that, but there are also other opportunities on the site, and that is included to a degree in the public realm strategy, which includes mitigation for those kind of issues. While we're talking about a single developer for the part of the site under discussion today, the developable area, the council is not proposing to develop the entire site included within the SPD at this point in time. And certainly future phases may well come forward separately, and certainly other parts of the site are in other ownerships, and it's not within our gift at the moment to dictate how they are developed. So we do anticipate in the long run that we will have multiple development on this site, but what we do need to do is what our residents want us to do, which is get on and do this in the most effective way possible.
Thank you, Councillor Lurney. Could I just ask, apart from Councillor Godfrey, are there any other members who'd like to ask a question? Councillor Cook. Councillor Cook, you're next then.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think the last words that Councillor Lurney quoted with her opening speech was bold in everything it does. And yep, I think the Lib Dems certainly do that. But also the word control concerns me. Who has control of this? Because it shouldn't be down to one person in a chamber. There needs to be more scrutiny with what is happening here to this council and this particular situation. So with regard to the new administration, as you are now, you also said something else, not only to be bold in everything you do, but you also said to be more transparent. And I think there are some people, there are some councillors in this chambers this evening that are struggling with how to deal with certain matters with the further development of Silver Hill as we know it. So my question to you is really to say, is it you that calls the shots in this situation? Because it can't be one person. It needs to be full council, scrutiny, and it needs to be open and transparent. I use those words back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Councillor Lurney.
Thank you. Control of the development will definitely not be one person. I certainly wouldn't want to operate like that. And I'm sure my cabinet colleagues wouldn't let me for a start. And I also think it's very important that that control is done on a cross-party basis, that we continue to have the involvement of members from all sides of the chamber in this development. I do want to maintain the reference group, which contains external expertise such as outside design support, expertise with people who've developed affordable housing, archaeological support, again, external. And I think it will be important to keep those kinds of people involved as we go forward, so that we're using that expertise to inform us, not, as you say, have one councillor making decisions which may, cause trouble down the line. Transparency is important, but at the same time, we come into the barrier of the need to go down procurement routes, which make it quite difficult to certainly to expose it to full public gaze. I'm certainly want to look with officers about how we can best keep members informed through the process, but we do have to accept that some of the limits of the OJUS procedures that we're going through require us to maintain confidentiality between potential alternate bidders over the process. You don't want bidder X hearing that you've been talking to bidder Y about something. So some of those issues do have to be dealt with behind closed doors. And I think it's one of those things where we might not like it, but we'll just have to deal with it in the best way we can within the law. But as I say, I do want to be as open as we possibly can on those matters.
Thank you, Councillor Lurney. Councillor Brooke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At scrutiny, we had an awful lot of discussion about the risk register, which is on page 160 of your agenda packs. And I'm pleased to see that you've put in the legal challenge risk and the archaeology risk we discussed. You've sort of alluded to the one that took the most discussion, which was that the risk of the developer pulling out once the high profit parts of the project are completed if we're relying on one developer. And that is still a consideration to my mind, particularly in light of the discussion we had at scrutiny, a real risk to our council and to this project that if some of the higher profit pieces are done towards the beginning of the project, they could easily pull out and there's no specific consequence to that. But there is a great deal of consequence to us as a council and to our residents. So I'm just really concerned that's not in the risk register and wondered if it could be reconsidered.
Thank you, Councillor Brooke. Councillor Looney?
I think it's quite a hard risk to describe, but it is a risk that we recognise and it is managed through the process. It's one of the reasons for proposing the phased approach, whereby we agree the phasing with the developer up front and only release land piece by piece. But one of the things about the development proposals as they're put together is that each parcel effectively is profitable in development terms, rather than having some which clearly are loss making and others which are very profitable. But clearly it is something that we need to be cognizant of. I think actually that's a greater risk if we were doing that on a piecemeal basis, that we might sell off some parts of the site to particular developers and get lumped with bits which have a really high public value, require lots of public realm expenditure, but the council gets left with them on their hands. This process is one whereby we can manage those kind of risks and make sure that the developer has to put in a significant amount of investment up front. Certainly the public realm issues will cover the whole site. It will be necessary to deliver the bus solution before the bus station can be built on, for example, which will be a significant developer commitment. In addition, the master planning process itself is a significant financial commitment for a developer. We will be expecting that for the whole site, as planning have told us they expect, not just for them to be able to do one phase at a time and tell us, oh, we'll do that later. That upfront master plan, that upfront phasing plan are both really important, and that's part of how we're going to manage the risks that you talk about. But we'll certainly go back and look at that risk register because it will be maintained for the lifetime of the project. It's not something that's baked in now. It will evolve over time.
Thank you, Councillor Looney. Councillor Kern?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, for the opportunity to speak on this one. This is a huge project, and I very much appreciate the work that the officers and everyone has put into this so far. But of course, it's one we have to get right, because this project is going to be here long after we're gone. It's a decision that's going to shape Winchester for centuries to come. And we are blessed with an incredible city full of amazing architecture, and we need to add to it, but it has to be right. As councillors, we have a tremendous responsibility on our shoulders. We have a financial responsibility to the city, not just for now, but for going forward. And we have a responsibility to a city that has been here for hundreds of years before us and will be here for hundreds of years after us. The last 2 years have been an incredibly difficult time for us, for the residents, for the council, this administration, for the city, for the country, and for the world. Lots of residents have got in touch with me with concerns about this project, including the City of Winchester Trust, and I know many have concerns. These decisions that we make this evening will have a profound effect on the city for the next decade and the next century. Yes, I'm sure there's been plenty of opportunity over the last few years, but considering the circumstances and the difficulties we faced with COVID-19, I just want to ask the question, as a cabinet and as a council, are you fully confident that you've consulted enough with members of public to alleviate their concerns? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kern. Councillor Looney?
Thank you. I don't think it's possible ever to consult enough to make everybody happy. So I don't think this is a matter about consultation. We've certainly tried to explain the approach at every opportunity, evolve that approach in line with comments. We certainly considered the City of Winchester Trust letter as part of our deliberations on this. But most of the issues it raised had actually been considered mainly actually during the strategic outline case, and I think were a matter of some documentation wasn't there at the time. For example, the archaeology brief hadn't been published at the time of consultation. So I think we've carried out an incredible amount of consultation, and we tried not just to make that Winchester-based consultation, but to get a reach out as far as possible. I mentioned our social media advertising, where we did reach across South Hampshire. It wasn't just around residents close to the site, which is often the case. I think certainly the City of Winchester Trust are an important stakeholder in the city, and we'll always listen to what they have to say. But I did have the experience many years ago with the first iteration of this development, when it was still Thornfield, when we came to the need to agree an architect on the scheme and a style. And we ended up with about 100 architects who all lived in Winchester in a room, none of whom could agree on the best approach and what kind of way we should go forward in choosing an architect. And I think sometimes when you have too many professionals together, it's quite hard to see the wood for the trees. And I hope that what we've managed to do here is put together a proposal where people will, going forward, be able to push aside all those woody bits, all those things about, you know, what's it going to look like, who exactly is going to do it, and all of those kind of issues, and leave us with a development that we can really be proud of, and choosing the right developer to help us master plan this site and move forward with developing that new quarter of the city that we all want to see is going to be a really important part of that. And I hope that residents and members across the chamber will be able to work with the administration to achieve that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lerney. Councillor Hall. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, thank you for allowing me to ask a question on this item. And thank you in particular to the officer team for their efforts in preparing documents for the decision that Cabinet made in December, and for the conversations they've had with the Conservative group to help address our questions before today. And let me begin by making it absolutely clear that I and the Conservative group wholeheartedly support the regeneration of central Winchester. We are indeed the owners of the SPD and the initiators of that. I also know just how much residents want to see progress on the site. They want some of their ideas to come to fruition. But sadly today I see a Cabinet minute before us that has not learnt from our past experiences, is missing some fundamental issues we need to address, and I fear is taking us along a path that will not deliver the SPD. The supporting documents discussed at Cabinet, such as the outline business case, the development brief and criteria for selection, all have elements that give us cause for concern. And despite our discussions with the administration over recent weeks, we've been unable to persuade them to modify their approach. So please can the portfolio holder explain to the full council why you continue to sidestep the key issue of archaeology, relying on mitigation issues with the planning authority, when we know this is an issue that we will need to tackle. Why you continue to keep the compulsory purchase authorities in the document, when we know the SPD said this is not a desired approach. Why will you not commit to leasehold only as our approach, which we have collectively said is our preferred approach? Why do you continue to say freehold? Excuse me. And why are you not wholeheartedly committing to a bus station, which is a key desire from residents? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Lerney, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, as Councillor Horrell has said, she's been given ample opportunity to discuss the matters with officers, and indeed I spent an hour and a half with Councillor Horrell and Councillor Lumby on Friday to go through their issues. at which point they didn't actually make any suggested changes to the recommendation in front of us today, which would be good to consider if they were thinking about proposing any. Our intention is to lease, not to sell the land, and the opportunity will be published as a long leasehold opportunity with land drawn down in phases, and draft publicity material has already been prepared on that basis. As Councillor Horrell and Lumbey know, the developable area is all that's under discussion today. The agreement to the recommendation does not give permission for the council to compulsory purchase either the St Clement's surgery or the Marks and Spencer interests. It only covers the land within the line. The freehold provision is in there on the advice of lawyers in case we need it, but it's for small parts of the site, but it is certainly not our intention to sell the land freehold. We have had, I'm sorry, I'm dealing with a number of points here. We have had, as Councillor Horrell is aware, professional archaeologists involved with this scheme for many years, and it is they who have produced the archaeology statement in line with national guidance and best practice, rather than it being put together by the project team. That archaeology statement represents a commitment to a minimally invasive approach. However, that is likely to lead to the need, for example, for plans for piling which avoid anything which might be damaged under the site, and for a number of development approaches which could involve, for example, reuse of foundations and so on. The costs of archaeology, it's a case of how long is a piece of string. They might be very low, they might be very high. There is obviously a risk there, but it would not be appropriate for us to put a number on that at the current time before further investigations are undertaken. It would just muddy the waters rather than clarify issues. That does not mean that archaeology is not important. It is a core part of the development brief. We require any development partner to use reputable archaeologists as part of the scheme, and we also require them to produce data in a form where it can be published. And that's totally in line with what we've been asked to do by our archaeological colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Lurley. And final question to Councillor Godfrey, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have one specific question on another topic, if I may. This is where Councillor Lurley has a normal opportunity to reassure my furrowed brow. As every opportunity I've had to discuss this and ask questions of the administration and their proposal for CWR, I've highlighted the City Council has invested over £25 million in the purchase and of the land in the central Winchester site, which generates over £500,000 a year revenue stream. Very important for the finances of the City Council. Each time I've asked about this before, the portfolio holder has kindly reassured me that this investment will be protected. Can I ask that the portfolio holder does smooth my furrowed brow yet again and reassure me that the taxpayers' funds will be protected by the proposals before us tonight, and how will these be protected? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Godfrey. Councillor Lurley, thank you.
Okay, we do recognise the financial challenge that's presented by developing this site. A considerable amount of money has been invested by the City Council Incidentally, some of the money that's been invested was buying back land that had been sold at previous points in time by the City Council, so there's a bit of circularity there when you look at it. We will be looking to gain the maximum return for local people, but we do have to recognise that achieving the aspirations of the SPD, rather than treating this site as a totally commercial development, which would lead to very different choices, will inevitably lead to a poorer financial outcome. The brief is clear that we will be looking for a developer to demonstrate to us that some of those financial challenges can be overcome. But I think we do have to recognise that there is a price to the SPD in achieving public aspiration for this site.
Thank you, Councillor Lerney. Can I just have one more? Councillor Godfrey?
I did mention I had another question on a specific, on a different specific point, if I may.
Just bear with me. Okay.
Thank you. In the paper, in page 54 of the agenda item, section 12.26, the list of categories of benefit are listed and include council tax and business rates receipts, stamp duty, additional expenditure in the local economy. The benefit to the public purse is shown in the business case before us as a figure of £48 million, which is the gross income, as we are told during our briefing session earlier, last year. The net income that can be expected from these benefit categories to the local public purse would seem to me to be equal or near to zero, as each new home, new resident and new business imposes additional burdens on local authorities. What is the estimated net benefit to the public purse, and how much of that estimate will stay with local authorities?
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lerney.
Thank you. The paper has been produced using a standard methodology and has been by people who do this kind of thing every day. The kind of detail Councillor Godfrey's asking for is not something that I have to hand at the moment, but of course we can provide that to him separately at a later date.
Thank you, Councillor Lerney. Thank you. Just want to ask members once more if anyone would like to ask any questions on the exempt business. You would? Then
could I?
Yes, just 1 minute, please.
Sorry, it's not on the exempt, it's on the questions. I want to ask a question.
Sorry?
I want to ask a question. It's not on exempt.
Oh, right. Last one. Okay, Councillor Dunby, that's the last one for today.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Can I, before I start, just reiterate my earlier declaration of interest? Obviously, Hampshire County Council has an interest in all of this and providing quite a lot of funding for quite a lot of stuff that's going on. Separately, as we are on the Pacific CWR, I should make two further declarations, if I may. The first is that I am a judge in the first tier tribunal property chamber, which deals with property disputes, the sort of things that have been referred to already. Secondly, I am a consultant at a firm of solicitors who carry out regeneration work. Indeed, I've got 30 years of scars on that one myself, who may be acting for potential bidders for this, although not at this stage, because there aren't any bidders, obviously. So if I can make those two declarations in addition. And my question is this, and I hope we don't need to go into exempt to answer it, but the paper makes clear that we have at present borrowed money to pay for the sites we own, and that these are currently funded from the income that those properties generate. and that we will be getting less income, if any, once we clear them all out and go ahead with this scheme. Could I ask, therefore, for the portfolio holder to confirm the ways in which we have certainty that the residents of the Winchester district will not end up having to pay that through their council tax bill, but in fact this scheme will cover those debts and the cost of that finance going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lumbie. Councillor Lurney, thank you.
Clearly, one of the requirements of the brief is that a developer help us deal with the financial challenges of losing the revenue that's attached to some of the properties. However, we don't at this particular point in time want to specify exactly how that gap might be filled, because there may be many options that come forward and different propositions. It is inevitable that at this point there is bound to be some uncertainty about that. What I can say is that clearly we have consulted our finance officers on this, and they are content with the approach that's being taken. Clearly, we do have a final business case process to go through, and if the scheme is not affordable, then we'll have to look again at it at that point.
Thank you, Councillor Lurney. Members, we now have a chance to debate. So could some people indicate if they wish to speak, please? Hope so. So could we start with Councillor Radcliffe, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Central Winchester Regeneration site sits right in the middle of my ward, and not surprisingly, residents have strong and quite contrasting views. Certainly, many do express frustration at past delays, and they want us to just, as I think the leader said, just get on with it. And I understand them. The council has been talking about this for 20 years, but there are plenty of others who worry about where this project is heading. The council surely right to focus not just on extracting short-term profit from the site, but on achieving longer-term social, environmental, economic objectives. More affordable homes, low carbon, energy efficient buildings, attractive new public spaces, more low cost, flexible workspaces that can help attract startups to our city, including in the creative sector. This is all good, but the question for us tonight is whether the process that we're being asked to approve will deliver the outcome that we all want. My concern going forward is about control. How can the council retain sufficient control over what gets built and what it looks like? And I fear that we are about to surrender a certain element of that control. A single developer for the whole site, likely a big national firm with no connection to Winchester, will be entrusted with designing and building out the entire site. They will, of course, be operating in the interests of their shareholders rather than local residents. Once agreements are signed and once we start handing over parcels of land, our leverage will inevitably be limited. I've listened to the arguments made by cabinet members, officers, and our advisors at JLL. I know they're genuine in their belief that a single developer approach is the best way forward. I hope they're right, but I worry about the consequences if they're not. As we've heard, there is an alternative, which has quite widespread support in the community, which is for the council to commission its own master plan, working closely with local architects who know and love Winchester and understand and respect what makes it special. We could then break up the site and invite a variety of developers and builders to develop each section in line with our master plan. The result, I think, would be more varied, more organic, and built to our specifications. And I just cannot accept that such an approach is beyond the council's capabilities. So as keen as I am to see regeneration begin, I'm not comfortable putting all our trust in a single developer. And for that reason, I personally cannot in good conscience support the proposal as it stands and will be abstaining tonight. Madam Mayor, one last brief comment, if I may. Ideally, decisions like this, with such long-term consequences for Winchester, should be bipartisan. The CWR scheme began under the previous administration. It's now being continued by this one and may one day be completed by a third. Whatever the outcome tonight, I hope going forward, we can work collaboratively as councillors representing different parties with different areas of expertise, but sharing one common interest, which is to see this project through to a successful completion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Radcliffe. Councillor Lumby.
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think Councillor Ratcliffe made extremely good points. I very much agree with what he said. Like him, I want to see central Winchester regenerated, and I want to see that start soon. In the SBD, agreed back in 2018, we had a way forward to do this. So I'm really disappointed that the Cabinet has chosen to ignore this, especially on multiple developers. I'm even more concerned that they've chosen one of the worst routes to procure a partner. What is proposed is an expensive procurement process with no scheme up front or design as part of the selection process. The express viability is marginal. The result will be that it will be too expensive for smaller developers, but too small for many bigger developers. The lack of return will put off many, whatever their size. And of course, the 4 successful judicial reviews against Winchester and the recent River Park issues will make this process even more likely to fail. Given all that, what self-respecting developer is going to waste precious time and money on an expensive, long and uncertain procurement process? I suggest very few, if any. So this approach risks being a failure, delaying the start of regeneration further. If we even found a developer, there is no certainty of any scheme actually being developed. The phased approach means the developer will seek to cherry pick the good bits early on and simply won't proceed if a phase becomes unviable. Shockingly, the lead partner from our expensive consultants failed to grasp this at Cabinet. It makes me ask whether we have the right consultant team. Committing another £733,000 to them seems an unwise use of council taxpayers' money. So again, we risk years more of inactivity by this approach. We heard earlier tonight how the climate emergency is central to all the council does, and yet net zero is absent as a red line, despite being promised at scrutiny. We were told that any attempt to dilute our net zero goals would lead to the end of those negotiations, but this isn't in the papers before us tonight, so we have no certainty that any scheme will meet this requirement. There are other flaws in what's being proposed here. The financial case is being calculated on the basis that the additional cost of delivering net zero has been ignored, apparently too difficult for our expensive consultants. So we have no idea what a net zero scheme is viable. In the same way, the impact of archaeology is being ignored. We heard tonight that this scheme is right for Winchester, but we have no scheme. So how can it be right for Winchester? And we have no idea whether the national scheme is viable. More evidence that we risk wasting more time on a flawed approach. There are much better ways to bring this development forward. They will be much quicker to get going and will have shovels in the ground much sooner. And without all our eggs in this one procurement basket, we avoid the risk of this process falling and the council ending up with egg on its face instead, and further delay. I shall not be supporting the proposed procurement process. It's all fluff and risk without certainty or substance. I suggest that anyone that believes in Winchester and wants to see CWR regenerated will join me in seeking another way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lumby. Could we now have Councillor Tippett-Cooper? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So it's interesting. I looked up the Claire Lloyd report, and I know in it says that the Silver Hill project was originally sort of thought about in 1996, and at the risk of showing my inexperience, I was still in primary school in 1996. So it just shows that the overarching thing with all of this, what people at Winchester want, is really for us to get on with this project, and I think this plan does that. the Henderson scheme that's been referred to many times, and the mistakes of the past that I keep, these sort of spectres of the past that are raised over and over again. The Claire Lloyd-Jones report does not, as its focus, criticise the principle of having a single master plan developer. It talks about the difficulties or the sort of the flaws in the procurement process of the development agreement from the years 2000 and 2012. But this procurement process before us that we've been presented today appears entirely sound, and I can't see at this stage any of those risks materialising. The key document I think everyone needs to consider as to how this is going to work is the commercial principles on page 87. And the notion that this is going to be a single developer that is going to create an identikit Winchester is a fear, and it is a fear only, and it's not borne out by the commercial principles that are here. That opens up the opportunities for this site to local architects, local businesses, and all sorts of different parties, third parties, as it says in clause 9. Clause 12, the finance clauses, sets out how the developer will make a profit, how it will make a fee. To reassure Councillor Godfrey is that that isn't going to be a concern, but also how the council is going to generate its own revenue and land value from this scheme. It appears that we can and will get a good deal. In terms of the risks around what happens if the developer bails out, well, the exit and termination principles in clause 13 talk about principles of indemnity protection to the council. I would, however, urge, and I do sympathise with the point made about the importance of importing the key goal of net zero carbon and the climate emergency is built into these commercial principles, but that's by the by. Ultimately, the SPD, which has been talked about a lot, runs through this whole plan. Indeed, it underpins the entire procurement. As I say, local architects, local businesses will have opportunities to be a part of this project, as will local people. And there is a strong statement in page 200 of our pack tonight about the absolute imperative requirement of protecting the archaeology. So no plan for a project of this scale is going to be absolutely perfect. And Councillor Radcliffe, I respect hugely and agree on almost everything with him. I diverge on this particular point, but I think this plan, as I say, it's difficult to make such a scheme perfect. But this plan is a hugely positive forward step at last for Winchester, and hopefully we can move on from the inertia that's plagued us since 1996.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Nearly 20 years ago, the City Council, with Councillor Lerney in charge of finances, chose a single development partner to resolve the unsightly area around Silver Hill. My colleagues who were there at the time objected to this approach. Subsequently, in the following 12 years, we all tried to make it work, but failed. Today, the City Council, with the same Councillor Lerney, all their experience, seeks to appoint a single development partner. Very similar approach. It failed last time, so I'm sure it'll work differently this time. Handing over control of a development to a partner, even one that is considered to share our objectives, our values, and our willingness to forego a normal profit on the scheme, will hand over to a partner that will call the shots on the development and will demand a minimum financial return for their efforts and investment. A return that could reasonably be expected to be at least 10% of the cost of development, and that would only be acceptable if the risk was deemed minimal. The risk on this project is far from minimal. Residential development is lower risk, but mixed development attracts far greater risk. How much archaeological investigation will be required? We've been discussing that this evening. The risk of development in Winchester, given recent history, is significant. The risks associated with development on this site are far higher than normal. So any development partner may well expect far greater return than the 10% that I mentioned earlier. And where will that come from? From the taxpayers of Winchester, as the council will only make the offer sufficiently attractive to a development partner by retaining significant amounts of that risk and or with taking less of the return from a development. The outcome from handing over control of CWR is predictable. A development partner will develop and develop to the best of their capabilities. A development partner will bring forward proposals that will deliver a better development. However, they will not need to worry about matters that emerge following the signing of a contract, such as a change in voter sentiment, or the impact on businesses in market towns, or other off-site factors that we councillors need to be able to respond to. If we don't have control, we cannot reflect that in what is an important development. This can be made to work if we know with certainty what we want developed, preferably with a master plan created first. But this paper before us makes it clear that we don't. We should not be signing up to a single development partner, which starts with a 12-month delay before the master plan even starts to be developed. I cannot support this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Godfrey. Can we now have Councillor Weston, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not going to say a lot, but I just feel that history is repeating itself, as Councillor Godfrey has just said and detailed in his summing up his speech now, just a minute ago. We've been down that road, and it took us to like an end of a cliff. We tried to hang on, and make it work, but we didn't. We couldn't do it with one developer. So I think going down that route with one developer will not work. You know, when we had the Claire Lloyd-Jones report, we listened to her findings. We worked collaboratively with all councillors from all groups, and we acted on her findings, and we engaged the people of Winchester. We listened to their voices and their ideas of Winchesterness and created an SPD, engaging in new ways of communication and gathering the residents' aspirations, and that was embraced by all. So the SPD specifically said it shouldn't be developed by one developer, and we need to listen to the people of Winchester.
Thank you, Councillor Weston. Could we now have Councillor Ferguson, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For me, the decision that we're being asked to make this evening is actually all about the future of Winchester, what the Central Winchester Regeneration Scheme will do for the city going forward, how it will support and stimulate the local economy and ensure the city remains successful and vibrant in years to come. I think it's right that the scheme should not principally be evaluated on financial return to the council. This scheme that's been put forward is clearly about the social and economic benefits it will bring to the city and the wider districts. I want to see, what I see is a council willing to invest in the future of Winchester, to create a best-in-class net zero carbon sustainable development. And although Councillor Lumby may have missed it, that is included in the development brief. New employment opportunities, new businesses, affordable homes in the heart of the city, making the 15-minute city that people aspire to a reality here in Winchester. New opportunities for cultural activities which allow us to celebrate our heritage, but also help us look to the future. I know that members have concerns, but I'm also concerned that some opposition members perhaps are deliberately trying to undermine the real progress that has been made. I had hoped, like Councillor Radcliffe, that we could actually all come together, because I know that we all want the best for Winchester. There's also concerns that in some ways the scheme that's being proposed, what's being proposed, goes against the supplementary planning document for Central Winchester. I don't really think this is true. From my reading of the report and from the considerable number of consultation events that I've been to, It's clear that the proposed scheme actually builds on the vision set out in the SPD. It does provide that mixed-use scheme. It incorporates the aspirations of the SPD, including opening up the rivers, beautiful public realm where people can meet. It also shouldn't be forgotten that the supplementary planning document has been adopted, and any planning proposal put forward by a developer in due course would be subject to that planning document. It does set out clear parameters and controls. Like other councillors, I do have concerns that the council retains as much control of the scheme as is reasonably possible. But I also do want to see progress. I am persuaded that things are different from when the Silverhill scheme collapsed. The use of the competitive procurement process, the phased release of land as the scheme progresses, the detailed work that is going into the development brief and in due course into the development agreement, and the emphasis that is being placed on finding the right development partner this time round. A partner that shares the council's values and aspirations for the city and its very clear commitment to net zero carbon development. That's very important to me. And our tributes to Councillor Murphy earlier would show how important it is also to the council. This all means that the council will this time have greater control. But I think we all need to be real about this. There is always an element of trust that we have to have. Like others, people in Winchester have told me they want change. It came out clearly in the work for the vision of Winchester, in the consultation that's been done for Central Winchester, in almost every meeting I've ever had with businesses, and in almost every conversation I've had with residents. They do want the council to be bold. They elected the Liberal Democrats to take control of the council in 2019 resoundingly, on a promise that we would show real leadership. They want to see us now progress. They want Central Winchester to move forward. Primarily, they want to see the city centre improved and regenerated. For this city to be alive beyond 5 p.m. in the evening, I'd like that as well. Winchester to be attractive to visitors and to help us retain young people. And to continue to be the great place it is to live, the great place of which I'm really proud. It doesn't help if others are keen to keep talking Winchester down, keep seeking to stall things. While I recognise that some residents and groups will always have concerns, and they've talked to me about their concerns, I feel it is time, as Councillor Lenny said, sorry, I will finish, Mayor, to be bold, for the council to have the courage of its convictions and to move forward. That's why I will be supporting the recommendation. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Hull.
Madam Mayor, thank you for inviting me to speak in the debate. And on our side of the chamber, we stand 100% behind this document, the supplementary planning document, as the guiding principles for Central Winchester. Why is that? Because residents across the district contributed to the document in their thousands and quizzed us throughout the process. And we shared our developing thoughts in workshops, newsletters, meetings in the Bapsey Hall, and in a cross-party team and at surgeries in towns across the district. In our view, the document approved in 2018 re-established the need to redevelop the site and how we might do that after the difficult times with Thornfield and Henderson. And it reflected the majority of wishes from residents. It is a document which brought all sides together around a common aim. It sets out our aspirations for this great place. I know, as I said earlier, that many residents want to see progress on the site. They want to see some of their ideas to come to fruition. Tonight, you're asking full council to agree to initiate and conduct the procurement process for the selection of one development partner. But you have not given all councillors the opportunity to debate that approach before today. And despite several hours of scrutiny, discussion, a long list of issues raised by the City of Winchester Trust, and many conversations, we still see virtually no change to the approach. And a handful of councillors, our advisors and lawyers, are making the decision to take us down a path we know will not deliver what we want in the SPD. And that is the outstanding redevelopment of central Winchester. I pledge that if we are returned to lead the council in May 22, we will endeavour to ensure proper oversight of this very key project once again, with all councillors, all of you, and all of our residents involved. We commit to progressing with pace. We commit to following the SPD in its entirety. This was hard won, and we need to stick with it. And we commit to getting something done. We can make central Winchester happen. I agree with many councillors here tonight, but not by taking the specific approach outlined in the minute here today. So, Madam Mayor, may I ask this evening that you allow me to move an amendment to item 7A, Cabinet 15th of December on the agenda. Under Council Procedure Rule 17.3D, I'd like the Council to refer back the whole of this minute to Cabinet. I'd like the Council to support the regeneration of Central Winchester, strictly in accordance with the Supplementary Planning Document 2018, and including phased delivery with separate developers. I'd like us to ask Cabinet to bring a procurement proposal based on this approach to Council as soon as possible. And Madam Mayor, I hope you will consider that amendment favourably. I move the amendment, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howell. Do you have a seconder, please?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Councillor Lumby.
Thank you. And I will retain my right to speak, Madam Mayor. Thank you so much.
Okay, we do have the copy of the amendment here, so if you just give us 10 minutes to circulate that, please. Thank you. Adjourn for 10 minutes, sorry. Thank you. If we re-adjourn again at 10:30. Okay, members, we're now going to have a 20-minute debate on the amendment. So can I have a show of hands, please? Who would like to speak?
To the amendment.
To the amendment.
Members, we have on the list Councillor Horrell, Godfrey, Pearson, Crask and Todd and Gemmell. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Just hold your hands up for a little bit longer for me. Let me just make sure we've got everyone there. Excuse me, Councillors Horrell, Godfrey, Pearson, Gemmell, Brooke. Councillors Crask, Todd and Rutter. Councillor Lumbey has retained his right to respond as seconder, and Councillor Lerney has the opportunity to comment in the end on the substantive motion. Thank you. It is only 20 minutes though, members.
So if you can keep this as short as possible so we get as many members as we can to debate the amendment. So Councillor Pearson, we'll start with you, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One of the ironies of this debate is that the present regime, the Cabinet and others have done a lot of consultation, and for what I understand from the feedback that I've seen on Microsoft Teams, that there's a substantial number of people within the city of Winchester who support the SPD, but not only that, are against a single developer. And that is something we learnt to our cost several years ago when we put forward the original local plan, which was shot down by court things. One of the weaknesses of that was it was a single developer, and that what was produced by that single developer was a massive structure, in many eyes, too tall. It competed with the cathedral, even though it is about, I think, a kilometre from the cathedral, but nonetheless, that was people's opinion. And even though that scheme went through planning, it was eventually rejected, and perhaps in retrospect, rightly so. Now, the sad thing I see today is that the Cabinet seems to be going along the same route that we did, i.e. going for a single developer, for, I have to say, some rather odd reasons, which I don't fully understand. I'll be quite honest about that. To me, if you want variation on that site, you have got to have more than one developer, especially if you are going to use the SPD as a basic planning brief. What we haven't done yet, despite all the consultations been taking place over the last, was it 2-3 years, oddly, there's no idea as to where we go forward from the SPD in some form of outline plan for this area. Now, when I'm saying this, let me be quite clear. I don't think there's anyone in this room does not want to say that this development should not take place. I think there's 100% agreement with that. What we're objecting to, or what we're concerned about, is what the people of Winchester have said, that they don't want a single developer. Now, you say you listen to what the people of Winchester say, but yet apparently you're not. Now, a couple of things. One comment heard, Councillor Lerney, you said, we want a return for local people. I agree, because what I hear from my residents in the Central Main Valley ward is, well, we're not too concerned about what is happening in the Central Winchester, as long as it doesn't land with a substantial bill on the council taxpayer. and yet there's a suggestion that that is indeed what is going to happen. It doesn't come free, this sort of development, unless you sell the land and then a developer pays for it all themselves, in which case you lose complete control as to what is going on. The other point which I picked up is that we're talking against the plan. I think as Councillor Ferguson said this. No, we're not talking against the plan. The plan is the SDP. We're supporting that. We're also supporting the council's, what I understand it, belief that this scheme should go ahead. It's the way that people are complaining about, and you are perhaps hearing, but you're not listening. You just aren't listening. You close your mind, decide and think, yes, I've read the Arab reports. Yes, I've read what JLL has to say. I listened to the debates on Microsoft Teams. I've got to say I missed the thing, the archaeology thing, Councillor Ernie, because I think at that time I was having a hip operation or I was receiving cancer treatment. In which case, I could not get to Winchester to attend that. Now, that's not an excuse, that's a reality. Now, it's along with a lot of people interested in the archaeology of that site would be in exactly the same position. They couldn't get into Winchester in order to attend these functions. I noticed the Regeneration on the site refers to a paper written in March 2019. 3 years ago.
Councillor Pearson, you've had 5 minutes.
Yeah, okay, I will just finish. Thank you for reminding me, Madam Mayor. As you know, I have a habit of rambling on. So I regret to say, well, not regret to say, I regret to say the Cabinet, I fully support this amendment that we've put forward for the reasons I have said. Not because I don't want this scheme to go on. I'm saying, for goodness sake, it's almost in my nightly prayers, for God's sake, get on with it. But you aren't. You're looking for some reason to delay. Not us, you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Can we now have Councillor Todd, sorry. We have 14 minutes left, Councillor.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed.
Councillor Lumbie has to speak.
I was involved. I was there. I remember being in the Silver Hill debates with a QC's letter in every single meeting, 2 QC's letters. I remember the hell that we went through. But let's be clear what's different about this time. You know, people are talking about, Frank rightly points out that the buildings were all too high. And they were. I remember looking at the model and going, bloody hell, it's huge. Now, the problem we've got is multiple developers don't fix that, because you end up with lots of different buildings that are all too high. Okay, you don't solve height and scale by having multiple developers. We've solved it. We've already solved it collectively because the SPD was backed by both sides by having an SPD that puts limits on the height. We have an SPD that requires a range of different designs. A lot of the things that you're worried about are already protected because we have the SPD and because we have a process that reflects the SPD. You know, when I read what the SPD actually says, because it does talk about multiple developers in passing as kind of envisaging it, but what it says, the core of what it says there is respects different land ownerships. Well, we're doing that. Enables sites to be developed independently. Well, being done in phases. So we're doing that with a long-term plan. Well, we're doing that. Delivery of the central Winchester area should be incremental or undertaken in a phased manner. Well, we're doing that. An approach that ensures that individual sites do not fetter regeneration ambitions. And dare I say it, we've done it in a way where a certain former councillor's GP surgery also isn't fettering our ability to develop. So we've done all the things that need to happen to deliver the important stuff, which is a range of different designs, limitations on height, and a good public realm. But the world has moved on. The SPD was agreed in 2018. The movement strategy was agreed in 2019. And there are certain assumptions. I mean, if I look at this is the SPD plan that was used to work out viability. It's completely different. I mean, the movement strategy has moved on and replaced it. This has 258 car parking spaces as opposed to 230 now. That would be fine with the SPD. It would fail the movement strategy because the movement strategy is the highways policy for the local area and overwrites it. It has 5 car parks.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It cuts the number of bus stands from 10 to 7 when our intermediate bus plan says we actually need between 10 and 14. And we've designed a plan that lets us do that. With the movement strategy when we did the SPD, it didn't have Friarsgate two-way, which is what's being proposed in the movement strategy. And that's not a criticism of the work that was done. But, you know, at the time it was done, we didn't have bus back better. We didn't have LTP4, LTM 120. I can throw movement strategy policies at you all day long. And so, for example, Bus Back Better talks about interchange with rail. So when we're looking at how buses are going to work in Winchester, we're looking at, you know, I've asked for a paper that says, how do we put extra bus capacity in at the station? How do we have stands there so that, for example, the bus from Alton can stop and wait at the bus station and then turn around and go back again? How do we actually have a system that works? Because actually, again, what's come through in carbon terms is if you build this with this multi-storey car park here and the bus station next to it, you're sending every single bus around the one-way system. It makes buses less reliable. It's higher carbon, higher cost. So that's not a criticism of the SPD. The SPD is a fantastic thing that will help protect against many of the things that we're concerned about. Monolithic design, prevented by the SPD. In the brief, it's not going to happen. Excessive height, protected by the SPD. It's in the brief, it's not going to happen. But there are other areas where things have moved on. Our proposals reflect that, and therefore I ask you to reject the amendment, and support the substantive motion. We'll come back to that later on.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. Councillor Hall.
Madam Mayor, thank you for allowing me to move the amendment. And we decided to do this tonight, to move the amendment, because we had been unable to persuade the portfolio holder and others of the risks of a single developer. We absolutely want the regeneration of central Winchester, and we want it to happen as soon as possible. Councillor Ferguson quite wrongly suggested we're trying to thwart the project. I'm afraid it was a poor attempt to diminish the debate this evening. The SPD provides the approach, that is incremental delivery. We've been given the opportunity tonight to make a change by being allowed to look at the minute and for that to have been referred to council. It's the first time that we've had that opportunity since this administration took over. We are simply referring the decision back to Cabinet for further consideration, for a new approach. And for those of you in the councillor team who feel that there are some concerns about that approach, this is your opportunity to ask your colleagues to look again carefully and make sure that we have learned all the lessons and that we do make some changes that will reassure all of us who want this project to proceed. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Can I now ask Councillor Krask?
Thank you, Chair. One of the reasons I joined the council was to address what I saw was a weak approach to development of the previous administration, development of city as a town and of local housing. As I've got involved in the council, I've got even more concerned about what I've seen in terms of how much money we spent acquiring the land in central Winchester and the process by which we went through to develop that land. I'm so glad that failed. I think whoever signed off on the purchase of the land may have had some great ideas and did in the right reasons for wanting to make a lot of money. The fact that we didn't have this massive monstrosity built that made us a lot of money is a fantastic thing. I don't want us to make a lot of money on the back of this. I want us to deliver this. I've sat through hours of scrutiny, and I suggest for events like this, people view the scrutiny sessions in advance, and you'll have a lot of your questions answered through that scrutiny session. And that's available to all people, all members, and you should take advantage of that. I've certainly got my questions answered from that. I think there's a fear in the room. I'm concerned that there's a fear from people that when you say the word single developer, you get scared. You get scared from what happened before. You get scared of Clear Lloyd Jones, and you just get triggered, and you go, well, we can't go single developer. The only other thing we can do is to do piecemeal. You've got the same risks if you go piecemeal as you do with single developer. And we're not doing single developer, well, this isn't proposing single developer for the whole SBD site. This is just proposing a single developer for part of the site. So in the same risks you've got to manage for a single developer for a part of the site, you've got to manage for multiple developers for the whole site. And what I want and what the people of Winchester want, and what people in my ward and the city want, is they want affordable homes. They want great public realm. They want a place that we build in central Winchester that attracts people to Winchester, that builds the business case and the revenue for the broader town, for the broader district. We don't want this to be making loads of money. We don't want to be selling this off piecemeal to individual developers who are going to be looking to make the most money they can on small individual sites. The only way to get great public realm, to defray the costs and the risks of the archaeology, is to manage this through a single developer agreement, well managed, learning the risks and issues we failed on previously. By taking that as education, we can do this better. We can do this with a single developer if we learn the mistakes, the lessons that we didn't take. If you look at the amendment suggests a phased delivery with separate developers. What does that actually mean? How many separate developers for what? How is that different potentially to what we've got now? We've got separate developers now. All this is doing is operating out of fear for making the same mistakes that we did before. We don't need to panic. We just need to learn those mistakes and build that into the risk management and the management of the agreement. So I certainly reject this. I think we all should reject this. It's just operating out of fear, and we should support the proposal that's put forward by Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cross. I still have 3 members who wish to speak, and we have 4 minutes left. So, Councillor Brooke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Brooke. Brooke. I don't actually have you down to speak. I don't have you down to, oh, I do. Okay. Sorry, Councillor
Thank you. Was it meant to be me? I'll carry on. Just to say at scrutiny, I was clear that I've never supported the single developer option. As part of the Central Winchester Regeneration Committee, I formed my opinion on that long ago. We do all want to get on with this, but that does not mean to the detriment of the city or by going against the views of the people who took the time to contribute their views to this SPD. I fully accept that things change, for example, the bus back better, but the views of the people have not, and they have made this clear. You said you've acknowledged the risk of the developer walking away, but the reality is, and as was stated at scrutiny by your expert, you can't tie a developer who may be losing money, who may be going bust, for whom the viability is no longer there due to the changing climate and costs. The single developer approach ties them in for far too long, and that increases the risk of them just walking away. I'm not saying this through fear. I'm saying this out of respect for the residents who took time to share their views and contribute. We need to honour their views, the cross-party views of the councillors who put so many hours into developing the SPD, and the officers' time who spent even more hours listening, sifting through, and contributing to the SPD. So I fully support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Brooke. Can I now have Councillor Gemmell?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, finally, in 2 years, yes, in 2 years, you brought some work to the council, which is for us all to discuss and debate in council. It's taken you this long. I've lost count. I've lost count of how many times I've had to ask what was the point of this meeting. Well, we've got a point now, but what a disappointment. You're ignoring the SPD, where the public actually told us several times, several meetings, several different ways, what they wanted. We all came together, cross-party, cross everything, to actually find out and distill a document with which we were proud to stand by. And now you're taking us right back again to where we started. Well, there is going to be a cost, Councillor Krask. I'm afraid there is. But what I want to say to the whole council is, it's not just Winchester that we're talking about. This is the whole district that will be footing this bill. And my district, my ward, for one, isn't happy about where the money is being spent and how much of it's being spent on revisiting, yet again, the madness that is repeating to get the same result. So many of you are new to this. So many of you have not been here from this, seen it going over and over. It is naive to think that this is going to come out with any great fairy tale ending. It's not. We're just spending money going back down the same old route. Please don't. Please go back to what the people want and follow the SPD. I support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Gemmell. Obviously, it's an important subject, so I'm going to allow the other two councillors to speak. So now we'll have Councillor Rutter, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In fact, I probably won't take more than the 11 seconds left. This amendment is nothing but a move for dither and delay. This project has been under consideration for 25 years now. What people want is for us to get on with it. This proposal is completely different from the Henderson project, and it will be subject to the SPD. So it's a planning document. We have to. It won't get through planning otherwise. For goodness sake, let us throw out this delaying tactic of an amendment and get on with building a better Winchester. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Runter. Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If we knew what we want delivered on the CWR side, we would record this in a master plan, so making no confusion or divergence from those objectives. But we only know now what was agreed in the SPD. We should not be handing over the scheme and the land and its income to a development partner, as we will have little influence over what is built out. We must keep control. I have raised earlier the need for any scheme to cover the cost of the land value of the site owned by the City Council, some £25 million at a current commercial value of about £6 million per acre. The City Council could well contribute almost all the value of the land and lose over £500,000 of income and still retain much of the risk. The proposed approach will generate virtually no income for the public purse here in Winchester. A different approach must be adopted that follows the widely supported SPD, where the Council retains more control, in which we can move on to the next phase of the project this year, not next, making real progress now and not delaying by a 12-month period while we select an unnecessary development partner, where a master plan of what needs to be built out is agreed before it is handed on to developers, where sensible safeguards are put in place to ensure that the inestimable assets at the centre of Winchester are protected. Please support this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Godfrey. Councillor Lumby, as a seconder, would you like to speak now, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Yes, I would, if that's okay with you. The proposed approach is deeply flawed. It is expensive. It puts all our eggs in one basket, and it runs a real risk of failure. It will also take years to run the process and get going, causing further delays. It may even not succeed at all, and we'll be back to square one. It doesn't contain red lines, just aspirations. And interestingly, Councillor Todd totally failed to even defend the procurement route or explain why all the eggs in one basket will achieve anything other than a nasty mess. No visual for that one I saw. Councillor Rutter says this is all about delay. But as I said, the route is going to take longer, and if it fails, we're right back to square one. This is not brave, it's rash, and we must reject this approach. The SBD envisages a site being developed on a section-by-section basis. Under the proposed scheme put forward by Cabinet, if one section is not viable, we won't know this for years when the developer chooses not to do it. Under the SBD approach, we will know this much more quickly, and we control the development of alternatives for that area, having known that the proposal isn't going to work. And multi-developers mean we can support local businesses and not risk a single developer going bust, which of course happened before with Thornfield. Even more importantly, it means we can put individual sites out into the market promptly and similarly get work underway quickly. Indeed, if the council really rolls its sleeves up now, we can look to get work underway by this time next year. Wouldn't that be cool? Well ahead of what is possible under this alternative proposal. The route allows us to properly assess viability, control the net zero approach without risking losing our sole developer of the whole site, properly deals with archaeology, manages risk, protects the investment the whole district has made in this site, and brings forward development on the basis of the consensus built around the SBD, rather than risking further judicial reviews that are already seen off station approach and now threaten River Park. By being in control in this way, we can have the resources for the public realm and will be able to achieve the curation Councillor Ernie referred to. Please support the amendment so we can bring forward development quickly and effectively. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lumbie. Councillor Lerney, would you like to close, please, on the amendment?
Thank you. I would point out that this council has been following the Green Book approach to project management, and actually the issue of how we approach this development was fully considered, scrutinised even last summer. And if members go back to that, as suggested by Councillor Crask, they will find that the approach of a single developer was fully questioned, examined and compared to the alternatives suggested. I think Councillor Lumbie is totally underestimating the time it will take to construct a master plan. Also, the idea that that gives us full control is, I think, rather mythical once we sell off bits of land. Master planning by the council was rejected due to the risk, cost and resource requirements through that Green Book process, and July was the time to really question that. What I hear from local people is A, they want us to get on with it, and B, the single developer is not the issue, it's the single architect that's the issue, and I think that's really important. And that approach to design is included in the brief and is something that we'll be looking for when we choose a developer. Councillor Lumbie has asserted that we'll magically pay for the public realm for the archaeology and curation of the site through this process. But that was one of the issues with the SPD, that it was never clear about how you could make developers within the site pay for those things, particularly given that we don't actually own the whole site at this point. Yes, we can master plan it, but we can't ensure that those bits of that plan that are outside our control pay their fair share of the costs that we're likely to incur. I would also point out that under the constitution that was agreed and written by the Conservatives, Cabinet could have agreed this without coming to council. However, we chose to bring it here because we felt it was important that you had the opportunity at this point to say, do we go forward? In fact, what we're getting from the Conservatives is just, just go back. What happens next time? Oh, just go back. We don't like that. Oh, just go back. I think Councillor Rutter hit the nail on the head with the dither and delay. I'm afraid this is just an attempt to put the whole project back, embarrass us before the local elections coming up, rather than it being about what's best for Winchester. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lerney. Members, we now have a vote on the amendment. Yes, Councillor Warwick.
Could I request a recorded vote, please?
We need 5 members show hands. Is it like recorded votes? Okay, I think we've got 5. Okay, just bear with me, please. Mr. Blakemore will now call out your names and note each vote. So please, can you indicate clearly if you're voting in favour of the recommended amendment or against or abstaining? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you just said, this is a recorded vote on the amendment, so I will now call out your names, and if you could indicate clearly if you are for, against or abstaining to the amendment. Councillor Atchwell.
Against.
Councillor Becker.
Against.
Councillor Bentote.
Against.
Councillor Bronk.
Against.
Councillor Brooke.
For.
Councillor Clear.
Against.
Councillor Cook.
For.
Councillor Cremoisen.
Against.
Councillor Krask.
Against.
Councillor Cunningham.
For.
Councillor Cutler.
Against.
Councillor Edwards.
Against.
Councillor Fern.
Against.
Councillor Ferguson.
Against.
Councillor Gemmell.
For.
Councillor Godfrey.
For.
Councillor Gordon-Smith.
Against.
Councillor Green.
Against.
Councillor Horrell.
For.
Councillor Isaacs.
For.
Councillor Kern.
For.
Councillor Laming.
Against.
Councillor Lerney.
Against.
Councillor Lumby.
For.
Councillor Pearson.
For.
Councillor Power.
Against.
Councillor Prince.
Against.
Councillor Radcliffe.
Against.
Councillor Reid.
For.
Councillor Raffel.
For.
Councillor Rutter.
Against.
Councillor Scott.
For.
Councillor Thompson.
Against.
Councillor Tippett Cooper.
Against.
Councillor Todd.
Against.
Councillor Warwick.
For.
Councillor Weir.
Against.
Councillor Weston.
For.
Against.
Councillor Williams.
Against.
Thank you, members.
Thank you, members. The amendment is lost. By 26 votes to 15. By 26 votes to 15. So we now go back to the original debate. So we still have some councillors who didn't speak earlier. And I'd like to go back to that list if you don't mind. So first we have Councillor Pearson, if you still like to
Thank
speak.
you, Madam Mayor. I said what I wish to say. No point repeating it.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Bronk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm very keen to see this long overdue and widely needed
central Winchester regeneration take place. But and I take comfort from the fact that we've had so much consultation, and Mr. East himself said that he, at a member briefing, has seen both approaches work, and therefore the central or single developer approach that's being decided upon today can work, but if managed properly. And my particular concern is that there are various checks referred to in the developer brief where the council will have the opportunity to take decisions along the line and maybe make changes. It's that change or that opportunity, that power that concerns me. And I'm grateful for the fact that I've heard that full council is actually being involved today rather than just the cabinet, and I don't wish to malign any portfolio member or cabinet as a whole, but I think it's essential that we ward members have the opportunity to participate in such a crucial decision. And so I was disappointed to read that the decision to appoint will be taken by cabinet. Page 100 and 101 make that crystal clear that there are gateways, and it'll be cabinet that decide after this full year of scoring on these cards who is going to proceed, and as the phases progress, whether those phases are acceptable or whether changes will be agreed by them. We've heard about the cost, and it said the prudential approach will result in either higher council tax charges or cuts to services. And it's been said that wards outside of Winchester don't mind so much what happens if it doesn't cost them. Well, we live, my ward, Colden Common and Twyford, it's just outside. We care very much what happens. But at the same time, we're mindful that there's been reference to good public realm and exceptional public realm. And if we're having to look at the pennies of what's being made possible by the development brief that's coming to us, I would much rather see us accept what's good rather than what's exceptional, and not have people in Twyford and Colden Common having to not have verges cut or pay, signs on their street signs, falling apart and looking decrepit, where Winchester could have paid for that instead. And therefore, whilst I'm not going to vote against the motion, I'm proposing to abstain because I have reservations about the control over the way in which the decision will be made and future decisions will be made, because unfortunately the Constitution allows Cabinet to take these decisions, but I've been provided with no comfort throughout that members will have adequate opportunity to influence the decisions before they're made. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bonk. Councillor Crass, do you still wish to speak?
Thank you. I think I've said everything I need to say. Thank you,
Okay,
Madam.
thank you. And the last person I have is Councillor Lammin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The regeneration of central Winchester is the most important current event for this city, and its effects will be felt over the next 150 years. The opportunities offered to us and the consequences of getting it wrong are massive. We cannot forget that the city's character has evolved over at least the last 2,000 years. We cannot let it descend into another anonymous, charmless town so beloved by planners in the 50s and 60s. We must do everything in our power to retain the city's unique selling point, which is its history, its heritage, and its beauty in parts. To make this great project succeed, we need to have a vision and foresight. I have not heard this tonight, really. We need council working together to make things happen. It is evident that party politics have not served the people of Winchester well, especially in regard to the regeneration of the city centre. We need to work together. The city needs to look at its resources, of which we have more than most, using them to our benefit. For instance, our excellent architects, town planners, environmental technology companies, and so on. These can not only give us the required diversity of opinion, but as well as local knowledge, but create jobs, thereby increasing the city's economic prosperity We must adopt a framework plan which, it seems, will provide more control over the development than the proposed SDP. This is easily achieved at a very low cost. Why do we refuse to do this? The Council has a very progressive climate emergency policy, yet no account has been taken of this. Why? I find it utterly amazing. The requirements for the buildings to comply with the current minimum government standard, whilst BREEAM excellence is suggested. Even this government recognises its bad practice. We should be demanding zero carbon with preferred buildings to be smart buildings. These buildings should be designed to last to the end of the next century as a minimum requirement. We are told that one developer is the only option. If that is correct, why doesn't the council become the developer? Any developer needs specialist staff, whom we could employ, or subcontract from Hampshire County Council. Any developer needs to borrow money. We can do that cheaper rate than the commercial company. Developers have to make a return on the project, which goes principally to their shareholders. The City of Winchester could therefore benefit over the next 150 years at least. We need to be a can-do organisation, not one that gives the family silver away as an easy option. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Clear.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've spoken on this project at Cabinet and my views remain the same. We've had representations from members of the public, stakeholders and fellow councillors on either side of the chamber over many months regarding Central Winchester regeneration. We have listened and taken on board many comments and issues raised, and we have incorporated raised concerns in the document. Having said that, obviously, and I'm very disappointed to be saying this from me, but from this evening's comments, there still appears to be, and I would state, a willful misunderstanding by some of the councillors in this chamber this evening. This project is a strong statement regarding the future of Winchester and its commitment to deliver a vibrant place to live and work. And there is, believe you me, I know as well, a widespread enthusiasm for this project. I ask this evening that you stand together and vote to move forward on this, and please let us see progress being made and start to put this exciting project, because that's what it is, into action. For action speaks louder than words. So, Madam Mayor and councillors, I fully support the proposal for the Central Winchester regeneration.
Thank you, Councillor Clear. Councillor Todd.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Full Council rightly backed the SPD, and Full Council is being asked to endorse an approach that protects the design principles of the SPD, the diversity of the site, and will do justice to our place and our history. An approach that protects the issues raised by residents of the council and gives us the level of control that's appropriate while still allowing us to get on with this. And we need to be careful that we're not being held against impossible standards. So, for example, Councillor Lumbey says he wants to respect the SPD, and then he lays out a vision where we start everywhere across the entire site. Well, I'm afraid that contradicts the SPD. We're all able to cherry pick little bits, which explicitly says we should have a phased manner, as we propose, and you're not proposing, which should be incremental. And again, not what you proposed. It's actually directly in opposition to what you said was your preferred approach. And I suppose that shows the complexity of what we're up against here. And I think it's really, and the key point here is we need to get on with it. We have a plan here that isn't just designed in the context of the particular area of the footprint of the city. It's designed in the context of the city as a whole and the district as a whole. It looks to the future and how this part of the city will work with other parts of the city, like the High Street and like what I hope will be an exciting multi-million-pound investment in the city by the University of Southampton at River Park. It sits alongside the movement strategy. the movement strategy has in places superseded what is written in the SPD, and that's fine. That's fine. That was foreseen within it. And the most important thing for me is it's exciting and it's positive. We have a route here that offers a way forward. I've not actually heard anything in terms of concrete outcomes where people are expressing a concern. I mean, all credit to Councillor Pearson. He actually talked about his worry about scale. When somebody actually put a particular issue that people were worried about on the table, like scale, and I think Councillor Laming worried about a diversity of design, that's all protected. That's all in there. Those are all things that are delivered by the SPD or by the procurement brief that we've put forward here today. So, and you know, this is not the same as the original Silver Hill proposal. There is an SPD that provides a lot of protection in terms of the scale and diversity of design and other things that I've talked about. We have a drawdown, we have infinitely more control through control of the land, because one of the main things that I remember about Silver Hill was it was one big block of land all in one go and one big design and all of that has gone. That was what the problem was. When people were marching on the street saying Winchester deserves better, they weren't talking about procurement. They were talking about outcomes. And the approach we have addresses the concerns that people raised and the outcomes that people wanted. We're told we're going too fast and we're told we're going too slow. We're told we're being too unambitious and we're told we're being too ambitious. It's too big, it's too small. It's wrong to have one developer for this site, wrong to break the site into bits. The truth is, this is the most pragmatic, sensible, forward-looking way forward that respects the principles and the outcomes that the SPD was aiming to deliver, that protects the interests of Winchester residents and offers an important part of Winchester's future. It's not the only part of Winchester's future, it's not the entire city, but it's a vital step forward. We have proposals that we should get behind, and I certainly will be endorsing the minute that's before us today with enthusiasm. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. Councillor Thompson, would you like to speak now as a seconder, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Gosh, it seems a long time since we started this this whole debate, and we've had I think we've had a really interesting and wide-ranging debate on the future of this very important piece of development in central Winchester. And we've heard a lot of views and frankly, a lot of tosh as well, actually, during that debate, if I'm being perfectly honest. But I'd like to thank all of you who have taken part, as I know how heartfelt your views are. It's been said a number of times that this project has been on the books for around 20 years plus. And of course, I completely understand the anxiety felt by some in this room, questioning elements of the proposal. And frankly, I'm a bit disappointed that the opposition are talking our city down in the way they have been, because I think we would all agree that 20 years working on a project is just too long. And now is the time to take that step forward with the proposal before us. Let's not forget, this is one of the best opportunity for decades for a development partner to work with the City Council to transform the central area of Winchester. In the wake of the uncertainty of the pandemic, we now stand poised to create a new vibrancy in our city through a major regeneration project, which puts sustainability at its heart. These proposals help address the very real challenges of supporting our high street. They will provide city centre living, deliver sustainable transport options which reduce our carbon footprint, and retain young people in Winchester through creative job opportunities, and have a greater focus on creating a buoyant nighttime economy. We are committed to working closely with an innovative and forward-looking development partner, and I believe that we will be able to attract
bidders of the highest calibre who recognise the advantages of delivering a scheme in one of the UK's most attractive locations. We shouldn't be fooled into thinking that if we delay from taking this step tonight, that the project can remain on track and be delivered in a faster time frame. This is simply not the case. I remember hearing that same argument last time. And let's just remind ourselves what it has taken to get to this point. It took 3 years of hard work and engagement by the previous administration to produce the SPD, which was adopted in 2018. Since then, there have been a number of consultation events which have attracted high levels of participation from members of the public. Additionally, we've held public open forums where the next steps were explained and debated. At each step, there were checks and double checks to make sure we were heading in the right direction. There has been discussion on a wide range of options for delivering this project and the risks involved in going down a particular route. These options have been discussed and explained to members of the public and all council members. We have held individual group briefings to ensure that all members fully understood why the preferred route was chosen. We even spoke to the government's High Streets Task Force, who were firmly behind our plans. It is precisely because this is such an important project for the city and our district as a whole that we have moved forward on this project inch by inch, and at every stage ensured that members of the public and councillors have had the opportunity to ask questions and give their feedback. For example, members of scrutiny will remember the 5-hour meeting that took place just before Christmas, where every paragraph of the report was scrutinised in great depth. And that meeting shaped the paper we have before us today. The council has listened to the feedback and adapted our plans accordingly. But one consistent theme throughout the consultation process has been the frustration with the constant delays, sometimes generated by vested interest. Many local people and businesses have urged us just to get on with it, and we've heard that phrase numerous times tonight. Building in Winchester is never easy, but this is such an exciting opportunity to move ahead. Do we really want to delay this project once again and let our city decline for another indefinite period, or do we want to be bold and take that next step? I am firmly of the view that we should take the latter, and I will be supporting the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. And Councillor Loney, would you like to sum up, please? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll keep it brief. I just want to give members some words of reassurance today. Clearly, I'm hoping that you approve of the recommendation in front of you, and I want to reassure you that the vision remains that of the SPD, but it is inevitable that our further research and the time that has passed have changed some of the detail, and any approach that's taken will find that there have been changes, the bus back better, changes to recommendations on cycle provision and all of those kinds of things. So the detail will change over time, but the important thing is that we focus on that vision. Cabinet will make that decision, but we will involve members as much as possible, given the restrictions of procurement processes, before that decision is made. And I will certainly look to explore with officers how much we can do that and at what points. All the potential approaches involve risks, but the approach chosen does allow us to choose to work with a developer who has an excellent approach to public engagement, low carbon development and creation, not only of the public realm, but in managing that public realm and those areas going forward, rather than having a developer inflicted on us, which was effectively the case in the previous iterations of the scheme. Being a can-do authority means choosing quite carefully what we can and can't do ourselves. It means being willing to work in partnership with others without always assuming that they're going to stab you in the back at some point. We do have to get used to working more in partnership with others. We are a small local authority, but we are very ambitious with what we want to achieve for our residents. So let's move forward with confidence and achieve that vibrant, pedestrian-friendly quarter that we have promised our residents. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Councillor Lerney. Members, please can I now put to the recommendation Councillor Lumbie.
Sorry, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to catch you just before you finished that sentence. Could we again go for a recorded vote, please? Assuming I have 5 friends.
Do you have 5 members?
I do. Thank you.
Okay. I'll just go back then. Can I now put the recommended minute of Cabinet on page 3 of the agenda pack to the vote? And I will ask Mr. Blakemore.
Thank you, Madam
Call
Mayor.
out your names. Thank you.
As Madam Mayor has indicated, I'll now call out your names. If you could indicate if you're for, against or abstaining on the recommendation from Cabinet on page 3 of your agenda pack. Councillor Atchwell.
In favour.
Sorry, Councillor Atchwell, can you say that again?
For.
Councillor Becker.
For.
Councillor Bentote.
For.
Councillor Bronk.
Abstain.
Councillor Brooke.
Against.
Councillor Clear.
For.
Councillor Cook. Councillor Cook.
Abstain.
Councillor Cremoisen.
For.
Councillor Crask.
For.
Councillor Cunningham.
Against.
Councillor Cutler.
For.
Councillor Edwards.
For.
Councillor Fern.
For.
Councillor Ferguson.
For.
Councillor Gemmell.
Against.
Councillor Godfrey.
Against.
Councillor Gordon Smith.
For.
Councillor Green.
For.
Councillor Horrell.
Against.
Councillor Isaacs.
Against.
Councillor Kern.
Against.
Councillor Laming.
Abstain.
Councillor Lerney.
For.
Councillor Lumbie.
Against.
Councillor Pearson.
Against.
Councillor Power.
For.
Councillor Prince.
Abstain.
Councillor Radcliffe.
Abstain.
Councillor Reid.
Against.
Councillor Raffel.
Against.
Councillor Rutter.
For.
Councillor Scott. Councillor Thompson.
For.
Councillor Tippett Cooper.
For.
Councillor Todd.
For.
Councillor Warwick. Councillor Weir.
For.
Councillor Weston.
Against.
Councillor Westwood.
For.
Councillor Williams.
For.
Thank you, members.
Thank you, members. That is carried. There were 21 for, 13 against and 6 abstain. If you don't mind, members, we're going to have a 10-minute break. Be back here by 11:45 promptly, please. Thank you. Are all the members here who were expecting? Councillor Green and Councillor Fern, have they gone? They've gone. And Councillor Prince and Councillor Radcliffe. Okay. Yeah, okay. Okay, members, the next item of business this evening is agenda item 7B. Consideration and determination of recommended minute of the Audit and Governance Committee. Mrs. Kirkman, would you please introduce?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Agenda item 7B is the recommended minute of Audit and Governance Committee, the 11th of November 2021, and this is set out on your agenda and also on page 299 of your agenda pack, together with the draft minute. Report AG062 refers, and this is included in your agenda pack on pages 301 to 319. The report's recommendation is for Council to adopt the Council's pay policy statement for the financial year 2022-23. Madam Mayor, finally, members will have noted that the Audit and Governance Committee had requested that the completed equality impact assessment be circulated to committee members to note, and this is also included in your agenda pack on pages 321 to 326. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kirkman. Councillor Powell, would you move the recommendation in report AG062?
So moved, Madam Mayor, and happy to take any questions.
Okay. Do you have a seconder, please? Councillor Lehman. Members, do we have any questions? Can you show of hands if you have any questions on the report? Councillor. Yes, carry on, please.
Just one quick one. I think we're looking at D, aren't we? Could the leader tell us when the last audit was done? This is starting from 2023. When actually was the last audit?
I think you're on the wrong question, Councillor Pearson.
What? B. What would it be?
From B.
Oh.
7B.
Oh, no comment about that. Yeah.
Okay. So, members, is there anyone who wishes to ask any questions? Any debate? Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The pay statement includes a confirmation that the City Council is still accredited to the Living Wage campaign. As I've said last year and the year before and the year before that, I remain a very proud councillor that I was able to introduce the Living Wage campaign to the City Council in 2013. We were the only rural district, district council to be accredited, and I'm delighted we remain accredited to this important scheme. It becomes more relevant when we start coming across matters, as in my ward, where I believe we have modern slavery, and matters such as Councillor Tippett Cooper is discussing later about refugees, where we must make sure that everyone gets a decent minimum wage, and this campaign and our commitment to it needs to be promoted at all opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Godfrey. Councillor Lamy, would you like to speak as seconder?
No, thank you. Just a formal second.
Sum up. Councillor Powell, would you like to sum up?
We've agreed, Madam Mayor.
We've agreed it. Thank you. Members, is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you, members. Members, next item of business this evening is agenda item 7C. Consideration determination of recommended minute of the Licensing Regulation Committee. Mrs. Kirkman, would you like to introduce it, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Agenda item 7C is the recommended minute of Licensing and Regulation Committee of the 8th of December, and this is set out in your agenda and also on page 327 of your agenda pack, together with the draft minute. Report LR 54. 9, so I've got a hole punch, I can't see the number. 549 refers, and this is also included in your agenda pack on pages 329 to 409. The report's recommendation is for Council to adopt the Statement of Principles under the Gambling Act 2005 as set out in the appendix to report LR 549. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kirkman. Councillor Bento, would you move the recommendation and report?
Yeah, I formally move it. Formally, yes.
And the seconder?
I would quite happily second it.
Councillor Reid. Any questions, members? Debate? Is that agreed? Thank you, members. Members, the next item of business is agenda item 7D. Consideration determination of recommended minute of the Audit and Governance Committee. Mrs. Kirkman, would you please introduce?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Agenda item 7D is the recommended minute of Audit and Governance Committee of the 16th of December 2021, set out in your agenda and also on page 411 of your agenda pack, together with the draft minute. Report AG66 refers, and this is included in your agenda pack on pages 413 to 418. The report's recommendation is for Council to accept the public sector appointments invitation to opt in to the sector-led option for the appointment of external auditors for 5 consecutive financial years, commencing the 1st of April 2023. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kirkman. Councillor Powell, would you move the recommendation report AG 66 and the recommended minute?
Sorry, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
I beg your pardon. So moved. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And do you have a seconder, please?
I do.
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Do you wish to reserve your chance to speak?
Yeah.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Councillor Pearson.
May I ask my question now?
Yes, please do.
Right, a simple question. I hope it's simple. When was the last time the auditors looked at our books? I see this operates from 2023, but what about the previous 5 years, or was it longer? I don't know.
Who would like to respond? Councillor Powell.
Our accounts are audited every year, Madam Mayor. And the last audit was to March 21.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Any further questions? Any debate? Councillor Lamin, would you wish to speak as seconder? No? Would you wish to sum up, Councillor Powell?
I think we're agreed, Madam Mayor.
Councillors, do we agree?
Agreed.
Thank you. The next item of business this evening is agenda item number 8, which is for the Council to consider motion notices of motion. Members will have seen that we have 2 motions this evening. The agenda sets out this evening for the first motion on page 4, which is to be moved by Councillor Tippett Cooper. Councillor Tippett Cooper, do you have a seconder for your motion, please? Councillor Todd, thank you. Councillor Todd, do you wish to reserve your right to speak? Thank you. Councillor Tippett Cooper, would you present your motion, please? Can I remind you have a maximum of 8 minutes? Thank you very much.
And I'll try my best to be faster than that. And it's a well done and credit to everyone that is still here at midnight. You're a credit to yourselves and your constituents, frankly. So I will try and honour that by being as quick as possible. Madam Mayor, thank you. I'm very pleased to present this motion to you and the Chamber tonight. All of us here clearly love the City of Winchester. We are a city, indeed we are a district, where each one of the members here will be able to tell numerous tales of local constituents being kind, courageous and compassionate in the face of the pandemic and the very real hardship by so many have faced over the last 2 years. Indeed, I look around the room and many people are nodding as I say this. We are lucky in our district. We have the extreme good fortune to be able to sit here and have reasonable and open debates about significant investment in regenerating our city centre, looking at outdoor swimming facilities, to constantly be looking to make things better, even if we disagree about what better looks like. For millions of people around the world, as members know, this sort of good fortune does not exist. In 2020, the UK received applications for asylum for 37,550 people, and this is around 3 times less than the number of applications received each by Germany, France, and Spain. The UK is home to approximately just 1% of the 26.4 million refugees forcibly displaced across the world. We can and should do more as a country. The stark reality is the future will present far bigger challenges, with millions more people likely to be displaced by the increasingly stark impacts of climate change. And so how can we play our part in Winchester in the face of this global challenge? Well, this motion is just a start. 4 families from Afghanistan have recently been resettled in Winchester following the devastation faced in that country in the summer of last year. Indeed, it was that crisis that showed me the very best of Winchester and this district. And for every venomous tweet made behind a cowardly anonymous Twitter account that sought to dehumanize refugees, there are 100 people in our district who donated clothes, money, skills to Afghan evacuees last summer. There was also a network of Winchester-based community groups like the excellent Community First and Unit 12, who pulled out all the stops to support those being resettled in our area. Now, City of Sanctuary is a movement started in 2005, and it's a network of community groups, councils, schools, universities across the UK who are working to provide support and welcome to people seeking sanctuary here. This motion will add Winchester City Council's name to a list of supporters of City of Sanctuary, and I hope will this be the first step in Winchester becoming a City of Sanctuary for all people seeking asylum and refuge. Applying for asylum is a long and hard and uncertain process, and the people who do so often suffer trauma. Almost all people applying for asylum are not allowed to work, despite an often strong desire to do so, and are forced to rely on state support equivalent to £5.66 per day, less than 2 cups of coffee on the Winchester High Street. Now, this motion seeks to continue and to shine a spotlight on the very hard work of wonderful community organisations like the Southampton and Winchester Visitors Group, who are here tonight, and I'm very, very pleased that they've stayed this long. They started in Winchester 20 years ago supporting people who are applying for asylum with practical and emotional support, and now work with 150 volunteers in Hampshire. I want to thank SWVG for their support for this motion and for the kindness, the humanity and the decency of their work. In addition, I want to thank Elizabeth Flint of City of Sanctuary Winchester and the University of Winchester, which is already a University of Sanctuary, who advocate, support and work for people applying for asylum and refuge in Hampshire. Indeed, as well as the Hampshire Cultural Trust, who are showing their support for this motion too. To these organisations, I am pleased to say that this motion means your City Council will support you in your work and do all we can to support you making Winchester and our district a more welcoming, supportive place for people applying for asylum and refuge. And finally, Madam Mayor, I just want to tell you a very quick story about a man called Mo. He was an Iraqi citizen in the 1970s in Saddam Hussein's Iraq. And like the members wearing blue rosettes on this side of the chamber and those in yellow rosettes on our side, Mo loved to write leaflets. But these leaflets contained ideas that we so painfully take for granted. For example, like the idea that people should be able to protest when they oppose something their government is doing or their local authority is doing. Indeed, I've been sitting here actually reflecting on how incredible it is and how lucky we are actually that everyone in here can vocally and forcefully express their views on local or national issues without any fear or indeed in some cases any filter. Now, this is not a freedom that Mo had. Fear stalked Mo every single day. The fear that his vocal, forceful objections to Saddam's brutal regime would mean the end of his life. Mo fled Iraq in 1979, found his way to the UK. He left everything he owned behind, everything he knew, after his life was directly threatened. His childhood sweetheart, Hannah, soon joined him, herself in real fear that her connection with him would mean that she was also a target of Saddam's regime and his secret police. I wish I had time to tell you the incredible story, audacious and breathtaking, frightening tale. I've actually shortened this speech, so I won't. But they applied for the asylum in the UK, and this was granted. Britain became their safe haven, their home, their sanctuary. Mo and Hannah worked 12-hour days and indeed nights, supporting their 2 children. They became valued and loved members of the Hastings community and contributed in every way to British society, which they loved and they cherished. Their daughters became NHS doctors, both spending years working in frontline hospitals and continuing to do so. Their eldest daughter, Amal, had 2 children, Mo's grandchildren. The older of these 2 children started St Bede's School in September. The youngest of these children started nursery near Peter Sims College. Now these little boys are my sons, Mo's grandchildren. Mo is my father-in-law and Hannah is my mother-in-law. And I'm deeply and profoundly grateful that Mo and Hannah were able to find sanctuary in Britain for obvious reasons. But I'm also so grateful to every person in their home city of Hastings, which is itself a city of sanctuary, who showed them acts of kindness along the way. So this motion is an expression of hope. It's an expression of our city and our district's kindness and our decency, our expression of a desire to do as much as we can to help some of the most vulnerable people. I know that in Winchester, in our district, people like my parents-in-law will find safety, they will find kindness, and they will find sanctuary. And this motion aims to support these aims. I hope you will support this motion tonight, and thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tippett-Cooper. That's quite moving, actually. Thank you. Members, we now have 20 minutes for debate. Does anyone wish to debate on the motion? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I won't be speaking for very long, but I am delighted to be supporting the motion before us today. The fact that we have chosen to have a debate about this important issue, that of supporting refugees and those fleeing conflict, says so much about our values as a council. Just before Christmas, I was delighted to be asked to lead, together with Madam Mayor, the Lantern Parade organised by the Southampton and Winchester Visitors Group, and to say a few words at the start of that parade. There, we heard a number of very emotive stories from asylum seekers and those that had supported them. And I have to say that listening to those stories, you just couldn't help but be profoundly moved, because they were so tragic, and you know, it really brought it to life, their sort of story and how they arrived here, and also what was happening to them whilst they were here, which actually in some cases was just not good. Just recently, and over the last few years, the images that we have seen on our TV screens of so many people just trying to reach a safe place and make a better life for themselves and their families have been simply heartbreaking. Some may remember my plea to the then Cabinet back in 2015, and I believe Councillor Godfrey was the leader then, following the appalling scenes playing out night after night of desperate people fleeing desperate conditions in the conflict in the Middle East. And I'm very pleased and proud to say that Winchester is an extraordinarily generous city and district. Just recently, during the Afghan crisis, the number of emails I received from local residents offering rooms and in some cases houses to those fleeing terrible conditions is astonishing, and something of which we should all be very proud. Of course, the City Council as a housing provider is in the unique position to be able to offer homes to refugees and stand ready and willing to welcome those that arrive on our doorstep. But also, as Councillor Tippett-Cooper has alluded to, we have also an amazing plethora of organisations within our district, churches, charities and individuals who are willing to help. So what better way to cement our commitment to welcome those seeking refuge within our district by becoming a supporter of the City of Sanctuary movement? I welcome this motion and will be wholeheartedly supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't mean to shock you, but in 2015, when the events of a time which Councillor Thompson refers to came forward, Winchester was the first council to offer refuge to Syrians coming through on the government scheme. I say that because we shouldn't have been the first. We should have been one of very many, 240, all should have all been there on the same day. But Winchester was first. It had the sad effect of putting me on news at 10, but we'll try and get over that. It's really important that Winchester as a district and the City Council and its officers and its councillors acknowledge the importance of supporting people in need. And the way that councillors and our officers have worked with these groups that are mentioned in the motion, the groups that Councillor Thompson has referred to, have done wonders in coordinating support for the most vulnerable people who come into our society, into our community. And I am proud that we were able to help in a small way. And we should continue to make ourselves available, because I got more support from the public from that one action than on any other activity I did, and I think the council did for the whole of the last decade. It is really important that the council leads on important matters like this. So I thank Councillor Tippett Cooper for bringing this forward, and would also urge all councillors to support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Godfrey. Councillor Becker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Tippett Cooper for bringing this forward. I'm so proud to be representing a council that is considering this motion, and I sincerely hope and expect that you all will join me and support it. It was so inspiring to see the offers of help from the people of Winchester to the Afghan refugees last year. I personally had neighbours offering spare bedrooms to strangers. Donation sites were overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the items given, and offers of support and care were made freely, the common refrain being, "What can I do to help?" I have no doubt that those offers will be made to others in need in future situations. This is a city and district built on kindness and generosity, and becoming a city of sanctuary is a natural progression of those values. Taking this step sends a message to refugees and migrants to say that you are welcome here. It expresses the views already held by the majority of our residents and projects those values to the wider world. I wholeheartedly and unreservedly support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Becker. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also wanted to really thank Councillor Tippett Cooper for bringing the motion this evening. If the motion's passed, as Councillor Thompson has said, it really shows Winchester City's Council's continued willingness and public commitment to support some of the most vulnerable in society, those who've been forced to flee their country. Sadly, sometimes refugees are demonised by the press or categorised as economic migrants. Far could be from the truth. But what we must always remember is refugees are actually people just like us, just like all of us in this room. The big difference is that unlike us, they're being forced to leave their homes, their country, everything, everyone they know, because they feel in danger, they feel unsafe, they feel they have no alternative. They deserve a warm welcome in Winchester. They deserve to know that we will welcome them and we will make them feel safe. Like other councillors, this motion shows the council's commitment to ensuring the people seeking refuge or asylum in Winchester will feel welcome here. It clearly sets out how the council will work with other organisations who are already doing great things in order to support refugees, to help integrate them into our community. And it's through that practical support, tolerance, kindness, and also respect, all values that are clear in this council. In addition to the commitment that the council made to provide accommodation, when we pass this motion, which I hope we really will do tonight, it sends a clear signal of the council's leadership in this area. We are open, tolerant, and supportive of those in the greatest need. I went on the Lantern Parade as well, and I was really taken by the number of local residents who were there, and to listen to the refugees, the poetry, everything. It was incredibly moving. And I was also taken aback when last week at my own ward, someone put out a WhatsApp message and they said, there's a new Afghan family coming into the area and they need pots and pans, they need plates. The site almost fell over with all of our residents jumping in with what they could provide. I thought it was amazing. I too, like Councillor Becker, Councillor Tipper-Cooper, I wholeheartedly and unreservedly support this motion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Power.
Madam Mayor, it's been said very well by previous speakers. So much of what we do as a council and as councillors and as officers is to treat the vulnerable with kindness and respect and openness, and recognising that by doing so you give them the best chance they have in life to take their place in the community. And I'm very happy to support this formal recognition that asylum seekers and refugees deserve our support as the most vulnerable we will have. And I welcome the opportunity to encourage them to develop, feel welcome and take their place in our society. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Members, does anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Gemmell.
I didn't wish to prolong the proceedings, Madam Mayor, but I think it's got to be said from every side of the House. I don't think you can say a contrary word to your motion. We live in a society that is so much me, 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 so much of the self, that you do tend to forget until you wander, as I've had the pleasure and the privilege of doing, across countries that are so much poorer than yourself. It does bring you up with a shock to see how some people have to live, and that's in countries that are free to our entry. There are other countries, for my own self, I've known of Indonesians who have come across who don't say a word of because they are conditioned not to if they wish to survive. But the wounds that they physically carry, as well as the mental scarring, is appalling. And if we can do anything to actually say, this is a rich country and you do not understand how rich it is until you see how the other half have to live. I support you.
Thank you, Councillor Gemmell. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know it's getting extremely late, but I was moved by Councillor Tipper-Cooper's very touching story, powerful story about his family. An extraordinary story, but if we take a slightly longer time frame, I would suggest it's not such an unusual one. My wife's mother came to Britain as a child refugee, and when today, occasionally, I hold her alien's registration card, a slightly chilling title, and the much more positive naturalization certificate. It's one of the things that really makes me proud to be a British citizen. We need to offer sanctuary. We need to tell people that we're offering sanctuary, because refugees are always with us, not just the ones we welcome now, but also those who came long ago and gave so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Todd, would you like to?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd also like to thank Councillor Tipper-Cooper in particular for his energy in getting this motion before you here tonight. I'm very, very pleased that we have such unity of opinion across the council, but also the depth and the personal perspective and the personal commitment that people have brought to the issue and to the debate. The story is not just of the contributions that our residents have made, but the concern and care that people on all sides of this council have expressed for people much less fortunate than us, in words and, as we've heard from previous administration, in actions as well. We sometimes have our differences as councillors. I'm so pleased that this is an area where we don't, and proud to sit alongside fellow councillors of all parties and none who share this view tonight. So I hope we can unanimously support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Tolden. Thank you, members, for your contribution this evening. I'll now close this debate with Councillor Tippett Cooper's motion and ask him now to exercise his right of reply to the debate, should he wish to do so.
No, I don't, other than say a profound and sincere thank you to all of you speakers that have replied, and to all of you that, if you do decide to vote for the motion, that do so. Thank you. And also, if you want to have a picture very, very quickly at the end, very quickly, we have some posters here to show our support for Together with Refugees, the campaign.
Thank you. Members, can I now put Councillor Tippett Cooper's motion to the vote? Please can I see a show of hands? Thank you, members.
And now we have our differences.
So the next item on the agenda this evening is consider the second motion that we have on page number 5 of the agenda pack, which has been moved by Councillor Godfrey. Councillor Godfrey, do you have a seconder for the motion, please?
Madam Mayor, I second the motion.
Councillor Hall, do you wish to reserve your right to speak?
I do, please, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
So I just remind you have 8 minutes.
Thank you so much. With this motion, I seek agreement across the council on how we can all demonstrate our commitment to show in an open and transparent manner that we are always acting in the best interests of those who elected us. My electors expect me to behave in a sensible and honourable way. When I am doing something that is not public knowledge, I apply the Agnes test, named after my late neighbour. She told me that I should not do anything or plan to do anything that I would not be willing to tell my neighbours about. Accepting that there will be some occasions when commercial or personally sensitive matters should not be discussed openly, I should still apply the Agnes test. If I could, would I be embarrassed if I tried to justify what I was doing to her? Our expectations should be in favour of openness,